Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the third in a six-part e-commerce webinar series. I'm Elisha Gilbert, and I'm a Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Small Business at Sasfin. We're passionate about enabling the growth of business in South Africa. So when we were approached to sponsor the series, it was a no-brainer for us. I mean, who wouldn't want to be part of a series where business owners get the opportunity to learn from industry leaders on how to build a world-class presence? It's no secret that COVID caught many companies off guard. The accelerated move to digital ways of working has meant that many business owners have struggled to launch an e-commerce offering and digital presence. At Sasfin, we've been building an online presence over a period of time with our Beyond Business Banking platform. So when lockdown happened, fortunately, we were poised to serve the market in a meaningful way as a digital-first bank where you never have to step into a branch. But enough about us. Let's move on to our stars of the session. And today I have the privilege of introducing the panel moderator, Rhys, who is the lead digital marketing analyst at Media Rocket. In his bio for this session, I'm sure you all read that Rhys spends most of his time nose deep in data. But I can also tell you from being a social media stalker that when he's not spending most of his time nose deep in data, he's in Knysna, or he's playing poker with his pit bulls, or collecting Marvel cards, just saying. Today, however, we'll focus on the part where he helps companies improve processes, deliver better customer experiences, and boost revenue. Over to you, Rhys.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so very much. That's I'm not sure if I'm impressed, terrified, or a combination of the two. It's amazing stalking, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session. As mentioned, I'm Rhys, lead analyst for Media Rocket, and I'm going to be your moderator today. We're going to be taking you through and discussing some of the key concepts and thinking points about marketing your business online, and what kind of really takes to be successful and what success actually looks like. Joining me today are some really amazing people. I've had the chance to work with some of them. I've had the chance to talk to all of them, and I think we're really gonna, or you're really gonna enjoy listening to them discuss this topic. Today we're joined by Brett Pearlstein, Rhys May, and Jared Cross. I'm going to give each of them just a 30-second just to introduce themselves before we kick off with our questions. And top of my list here, Brett, if you could just come online and do a little bit of an intro, that would be great.
Thanks, Rhys, and thanks, Elisha and Sasfin, for the opportunity, and Online X, and really great to be here. I'm Brett Pearlstein, CASA by profession, Google Ads expert in my new life, and I'm really proud to be here to share you some of my insights of how we've helped over 300 local businesses and 5,000 global businesses unlock their true potential online through the power of our proprietary technology and the Google Ads platform.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brett. Rhys May, second Rhys in today's conversation. If you could just come on and tell people why Rhys are just the best people on earth, man. I'm just
How's it, everybody? I'm Rhys May, co-founder of My Retail, online e-commerce store that services South Africans with the leading tech items from online to the doorstep. Today we'll be discussing some of the things with regards to marketing as to how we took My Retail from 0 to over 1 million in under 6 months, during COVID. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. And then last but most definitely not least, Jared, if you could come through, just tell us about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I started as a graphic designer and moved into journalism, and then moved into paid media after that. So I've had a little bit of everything in terms of paid media. Yeah, hoping that I can use that experience over the last 15 years to guide people to kind of grow the same way I did in their businesses. I've seen guys go from mom and pop stores into massive corporations just using digital effectively. So hopefully the advice we give will be fruitful.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Just also for all the listeners, if I sound like something died in my throat, it's because it feels like something did. So I'm going to probably do less talking than I'm used to doing, which is really difficult. Those who know me well will know that that's quite a hard thing for me. So, excuse me. And as we go along, guys, we're going to be doing intimate polling. The more you get involved, the more you answer, the more questions you ask, the more relevant we can make this session to everybody. So we've got a couple of questions and topics we're gonna go with, and I'm going to introduce the first one shortly. I'd like to get going with the very first poll. So my poll here is, why do you need to go online today more than ever? Is your business currently online, and do you feel like it's become more important with COVID? So the more people that answer that, the bit more information we can, or better answers we can give. If I can now ask the guys to all come online, I can see all your faces. It'll be great. I don't want to be the only person who looks this good on camera. Thank you very much. Cool. All right, seeing you guys. All right, so our first topic we want to discuss is this concept of, build it and they will come, and how that really is not a truth. And anyone who's been in digital, has built a digital product, maybe they've even, like I did before, actually hit your head badly where you thought, I'm going to build this thing, it's amazing, and somehow magically people are just going to find me because I need to be on Facebook and I need to be here and I need to be there. But all I need to do is be there, right? I don't actually have to do anything once I'm there. And now I can tell you that from my perspective, that is almost categorically incorrect. Just because you build something is in no way a guarantee that it will happen. And you know what, I'd actually like, Rhys, I'd like you to kick off on that and just give us your insight. What do you think about the idea of, I'm going to build it and it'll just, something will just happen? What are your thoughts around that? Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, no, I definitely think that that's the wrong approach to take in today's day and age. We have so much data available to us. But the main reason, I think there's a couple of reasons why I think we shouldn't go that route. I think understanding your market is super important. Understanding your brand and how your brand fits into the landscape is also very important, so that you can actually speak, your product or service offering can actually speak to your actual market. You also need to understand what your consumer's into, what makes your consumer tick, at what times, what income brackets are they in, the demographic that you need to target, and how your brand fits into that whole picture. So I definitely think that before, in the past, when data wasn't available, that was a common saying that people went to build it and will come, and clients will come. I think that is the quickest way to waste money. You actually need to reverse engineer everything nowadays and look at your end goal and where you want to be and work your way back from there so that you can have a holistic approach to actually marketing to your consumer. But I think a lot of it comes in deep insights and actually understanding where your brand is, where your brand sits, where your consumer sits, where your consumer spends, how they spend, why they spend, and actually tapping into a bit of the psyche in that.
Okay, yeah, 100%. I mean, I can definitely see, in this digital space where you've got 10 million places that can be, and you can try and fit into these 10 million different segments. That's actually not going to work unless you pick and use the data. You've got to be able to say, well, actually, I'm going in this direction because the information is telling me I need to be going in this direction. And then, the great thing about data is you go down this route, and because it's you've got an agile environment, you're like, oh, hold on, this is not actually working, but you've got the information to tell you why it's not working, and you can make an adjustment. And I think the other concept that people have, I often hear this with search engine optimization. Oh, but I've got a website. Why am I not on Google? Why am I not there already? And Jared, I can see you nodding your head there. So I'm going to leave that one in your court, because it drives, build it and they will come. It's the same as Google. Build it and Google will see it. I'm not sure. But I know from my experience, it actually takes a lot of legwork. So I don't know if you've got what you can add to that.
Yeah, so it's extremely frustrating from my perspective to deal with a lot of businesses and then get access to their social media or their Google My Business pages or their websites, and you just feel that it's sad because these platforms are representative of the business that you've built, and if you haven't really put the thought and strategy into that, then the consumer that's coming to investigate or kind of get information about your business, that is the representation of what they see. And the likelihood of them doing business with you, unless it comes from word of mouth or more traditional means, is very low. So yeah, it's massively important. I think Rhys hit the nail on the head, Rhys Meyer, by saying that it needs to be something that is reverse engineered by looking at the end goal and then strategizing based on how you intend to get to that end goal. And that way you won't have a start-stop situation, which a lot of people end up with.
Great. Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that start-stop, especially in digital, you start going on a journey and then, I don't know, something goes wrong, you hit a hiccup or you didn't think about it and then you stop and you tend to pull everything back. And it's actually a case of, if you just kept some of your process going, you worked a little more from an agile perspective while having a good footprint or good thinking at the beginning, you can actually start to adjust yourself and either correct or maybe even find some advantages. I know one of the big misconceptions about especially this, build it and they will come, is the same as, and this, I don't know if it's as prevalent, but it used to drive me insane, is that, no, but digital's free, If I do a post on Facebook, I know, but digital's free. People will see it on Facebook. And I guarantee you, as a business on Facebook, the chance that someone's just going to see it is near on zero. You have to be willing to spend on these platforms. And Brett, I know particularly from a paid search perspective, I mean, I worked with it only on the SEO side, on the search engine, organic side. But what do you have to say about that, about thinking or approaching it from a paid perspective?
Yeah, Rhys, I mean, echoing, but all your guys' sentiments. I think, really it's about starting with the end in mind. And I think the biggest mistake I see tons of business owners make is not having any commercial objectives set out on where they're actually looking to go with their marketing. And when they don't have when they don't critically evaluate and have those internal discussions, inherently 90 days or 360 days down the line, they land up disappointed. So I think, really this is not about build it and they will come. It's really about build it, spend marketing, put marketing dollars behind it, analyze the data, iterate, and then from there, hopefully more will come. And I think it's really, I think there's a time and a place for each one of these marketing channels, which I'm sure we'll go into in more detail in your business life cycle. And there is the right time and the right place for SEO, social, paid Google marketing, and so on. But each of these channels have their pros and cons, and each of them require different marketing investments. And just making sure that you're primed for that investment at the right time in your business life cycle is very important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all got it, but whenever we start a new project and the client's like, well, what's it going to cost me? We say, well, these are the channels, these are the 4 top things that you can be doing. But these 3, in order for something like, let's say, if you really want search engine optimization or your organic to work, don't treat it in isolation. Use it as part of your multi-channel approach, throwing paid into the mix, of course, and that's where you're going to get a better overall, a better net effect. And it's actually, it's a good question, and it's going to bring me into my second segment here. But I'm going to ask another poll here. If you guys could just answer, where can you find existing new clients online? It's a question to not to the group, but to the people. A poll should come up shortly. So, I mean, it's a good question. I'm going online. How do I start creating some sort of structure that actually fills my business with leads? And I guess what is a lead? What a lead and a sale is different. E-commerce is nice and simple. How do I get people to buy? Business a little more complex. How do I get people to subscribe to my service? But what are kind of the first things you really need to start about when thinking about building a pipeline? Brett, I'm going to go back to you. I'm literally going to reverse this order now, but where would you start with thinking about, well, I've got to build this pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at the first poll there, 94% of people in the audience said that, due to COVID, there's no better time than now to be online. And I think the biggest misconception here is people think online or e-commerce, that means you have to have an online store. But really, I mean, e-commerce right now is really about being discoverable online and be able for people to find your business. And you can do that with free tools like Jared spoke about earlier with Google My Business. And I'm happy to, get the team to share the link on where you can get your business registered on Google My Business after the chat. But, this is really about finding the right platform for your business. and ensuring you're not only talking to new customers, but helping retain customers and speak to existing customers by keeping your brand top of mind. And I'm sure Jared can talk to the value of what Facebook can do in that space. But from a Google perspective, where Google search marketing, particularly the paid platform, is fundamental to that, is it's intent driven. So people go with a specific intent to Google to look for your goods or services. And your goal from a marketing channel perspective is ensuring that you're there and that you can be found. And then you're using the data provided by the platform to make smarter business decisions thereafter.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's actually an interesting, and Jared, I'm going to actually go to you on that one, because I guess, Brett, listening to what you say, you might say that Facebook would act more like a digital billboard, for instance, like the here we are, this is, reach as many people as possible, whereas your Google ads would fall more into the bottom of your funnel stuff, like buy this, do that, etc. But I know that social can very much so fill that funnel, even lower down. So I think, Jared, I'm going to put that straight to you and see what you think about building a pipeline. Maybe from the aspect of social would be quite interesting to hear.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the most important things is to understand exactly what all these channels are all about and why people go and use these particular platforms. It was already mentioned by Brett that Google's an intent-driven platform, right? People use that to find information. So anyone that's searching for something on Google obviously is going there with some intent. Whereas a lot of the other social media platforms have different functions. Facebook is particularly good for reach. I mean, I know in South Africa alone, there's close to 22 million people on there. And with the artificial intelligence available to people on Facebook, there's a lot that can be done. So it's almost a given that people should be using Facebook. Then along with that, if your company or your product is something that is going to incorporate visual storytelling, Instagram's probably the best channel you can have for that at the moment. TikTok is coming up. Personally, not the hugest fan of TikTok, but people have seen tremendous success in it. I'm probably a bit old for TikTok, to be honest. Twitter, any newsworthy trends, that's where you should be on Twitter. And then you've got channels like Pinterest, which is innovation and ideas. So you've got to understand the channels before you can kind of examine and see how they fit into your business model and how they help you achieve your end goal that we've all been talking about. So knowledge about the channels is key before you go into anything deciding your strategy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we started this whole journey with we said build it in account. That's not going to happen. You need to know where you're going and preferably why you're going in that direction. And if you don't have the right structures in place, to learn about it. And I think the other thing that this definitely then touches on is that these, I mean, if we think about this being intent driven and that being awareness driven, these channels probably work better together than they would in isolation any day of the week. And particularly, for getting your business online, for getting good traction. I mean, we talk about, the aspects of remarketing, retargeting. I mean, without getting into the nuances of recent changes, but that is still an aspect of digital marketing. Particularly from like launching a new brand and choosing your channels and choosing how to get your pipelines going. I mean, Rhys, what is your experience on this, on channel choice, or pipeline generation specifically?
Yeah, so I think channel choice is quite important. Obviously, understanding certain channels are more expensive compared to other channels. How you run those ads obviously have a large impact on the performance of the ads. For example, if your ad frequency is going to be through the roof, like 20, for example, you're going to be retargeting the same customer all the time. So selecting your channels, whether it be Instagram, whether it be, for example, on Instagram specific right now, they've moved away from being a photo sharing app and they moved heavily into video. So they are pushing on the back of the algorithm. They're pushing reels and video content a lot more. So identifying the specific platform and then the specific medium within that platform, whether it be lives on IGTV or reels on Instagram or specific video versus carousel or static. It's all very important to understand how these platforms work. And that's why I think each one has its own person that it can speak to into a social media manager. Then you have the actual social media specialist and your content creator. And then that goes for all the different platforms. So I think you actually need to look at the data provided on the back end. You can actually Google has it where you can reverse search and check what your conversions might look like based on historic data. So does Facebook and the Facebook family, so across the Messenger, Instagram, etc. So I think there's definitely a case in point where people can go and actually look and assess what can they possibly get for that specific channel based on their budget available, based on the current upcoming season, understanding the competition at that point in season as well, just so they can get a realistic idea as a business or as a business offering a service or product, just so they can really understand where they fit into that. And then from that, based on your budget, or if you're going 100% organic, you can then decide, right, you're going to go with these specific channels, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and TikTok.
Okay, great. That TikTok thing, Jared, you're not alone. I mean, we all have to come to terms with it, but yeah, no, it's fun to watch, but a bit scary, to think about. Rhys, you made an interesting point there. Is content type and application. So, I mean, interesting for everybody to understand on the, this is not a call. What is this? Webinar, on the webinar. Is that, yes, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got LinkedIn, but guess what? You can put video, image, carousels, shopping on each of these networks. So now you need to decide, well, what is my network going to respond to better? And for me, the easiest way to do that would be to test it. If I've got a finite budget, my first 3 months is going to be right. Which of these channels is going to give me whatever I define as return? And there's been some really good questions coming through here about, well, what if I have a finite budget, and how do I choose the best channels? And I'm going to get to that right now. But first, I just want to get to the next question. Not question. The thing where people, anyway, the poll. Where can you find existing and new clients? All right. So I just also wanted to touch on that again, just with what Rhys was saying there. For instance, and Jared, you can also, I think, hop into this. For instance, LinkedIn versus Facebook. On Facebook, I find that you can be reasonably sell intensive. Here's a product. Why don't you, try it out, buy it, share it, whatever. But on LinkedIn, we've fallen flat. We try to sell something directly on LinkedIn, and it just goes, from my experience, completely pear-shaped. So that fit, that content fit for platform, I think, is very important. So Jared, I don't know, if you have something just to add to that, because people can go horribly wrong thinking that this network will do that, but actually it's not really designed to do that. So
I think it depends on the product itself, right? And it depends on the value proposition, and it depends on the consumer market you're targeting. There's certain products, say in the insurance space, if you're looking at something like funeral cover, where you can target a mass market and they won't be doing as much research as someone that's going to lay out a lot more money, let's say, for instance, on purchasing a vehicle. I mean, it's obvious, but it's also, you would think it's not so obvious the way that people construct their content and compile their strategies. You've got to consider who your consumer is, and then choose and select the objectives and the channels based on who that consumer is. I see far too many people just taking this plug and play approach. Even when choosing the channels, they're putting the exact same content across every single channel. And so, yeah, these are common mistakes that are just costing businesses, in getting people interested in their products, because it just gets lost amongst the noise. And it really just boils down to that initial strategy. What I would say is, make sure you've done a SWOT analysis. Make sure your brand has an essence that stands out and is unique. And that's already a great start to choosing what way to go.
Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense. And I actually see quite a few questions coming through here. So this is obviously a good topic that we've hit on. One of the questions I'm seeing here is, if you have a limited budget and have chosen a platform like Facebook, is it good to use like a three-prong approach? Now, I know that we often say try a three-prong at least in the beginning: awareness, traffic, and conversion. And that's very much so from a multi-channel perspective. And I don't think it'll suit every channel. But Brett, from your perspective, when you want to, like, I've got this kind of budget and there's maybe three things I need to achieve. It could be sales, it could be awareness, it could be retargeting. what kind of process would you take? What would you suggest to someone who's coming and asking you, well, what are the strategies I should be using here for choosing my audience and an outcome for a channel?
Yeah, Rhys, I mean, I think we've got quite a lot of experience in that. Obviously, being a large-scale agency and servicing predominantly SMEs, we really do help loads of businesses who do have a finite budget. And I think, getting to understand the commercial objectives, who's their money in hand customer, how much is a lead worth to their business, and how much revenue could that potential lead result in, is fundamental to the strategy that we develop and the channels that we advise them on. So, if you're looking for direct response marketing, I think, as Jared mentioned too, that because of the intent on Google, it is very lower funnel. So but in saying that, the flip side to that is, because that intent is so high, you're generally having to pay slightly more for that marketing ad unit. So I think the interesting nuance here is, I don't think there's a single brushstroke that covers, what do I spend? What is my strategy? I think we spend a lot of time getting to understand businesses and business owners' goals and objectives for their business, and then really tailoring the marketing solution towards that. So, I think I would stay clear of like a paint by number approach, and really try and, get a deeper understanding of what you're trying to achieve, and then match the marketing objectives to that. And like, if it gets too complex to go it on your own, then look to find the help of an agency, but make sure you arm yourself with the right questions to ask them, so you don't get the wool pulled over your eyes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think something that we want to touch on with people is that there is a large amount of information out there. You could definitely educate yourself. And it's really important that you do at least get some basic understanding, so you don't, walk down this path and it's actually, the path leads off a cliff. I mean, that's not really good for anyone. And I'm actually just going to ask my next poll here is how do you reach audiences, and what should you be asking them? And it's a good question. So, I mean, we talk about I'm using Google ads, I'm using Facebook, I'm using Facebook ads, I'm using LinkedIn, etc. But how do I attract the right traffic? How do I find the right traffic to get to my website, to my e-commerce store, and get them to convert? I mean, there's definitely things like market research, competitor research, but I'd be interested to know, Rhys, from your perspective, if you're looking for the right traffic at any given time, how would you, go about at least starting to think about this?
So there's multiple different ways you can find the right traffic. I think one thing before you actually look for the traffic is actually outlining your specific target audience and segmenting them into different audiences. So, for example, if you're selling a product, there might be customers that might come on in the early stage and buy the product in the early stage. Then there might be in the middle phase and then the latter phase, the later phases as well. So really identifying what makes them tick and understanding them, because that's going to help you a lot when it comes down to your targeting, etc. Another thing you can do is, for example, what we did was for one of the businesses we worked on is we went through to competitors and actually engaged with them on a social level. So I actually used social media to actually engage with them and speak to them, where we saw that they were engaging with a particular competitor brand. That way we actually won them over in terms of social trust, and then they came through and then they followed us on Instagram. And then from there, they then moved over into our warm audience, which we could then retarget them with ads. And then after we had brand awareness, brand recall, and then we could actually convert them into an actual product sale. So that's just a simple strategy that was used. Another way you can do it is through Instagram direct messaging. There's multiple ways you can do it, but I think very important is to understand each market segment for your specific brand, and then really detail that so that you know what makes them tick specifically.
That's actually, as you were saying, that's something that comes into my head, and this is how I understand it, is persona development for each stage in the funnel, because the person who buys here is not the same as the person who buys here, is not the same as the person who buys here. And those people could even move between the funnels, but having like a really definitive, here's Bob, this is how Bob buys, this is what Bob wants. It's actually a really good place, and we found it very useful as well.
100%. I think another important thing is also making sure that when you do find them and you do engage with them, is there something to actually convert them? Is the brand solid enough? Does the brand have enough reviews? Is enough social proof? Is enough social trust online? All of those factors will, at the end of the day, lead to your actual full conversion or or your drop-off rate. Whether they come through, they like what they see, but the price point isn't where they are. Those are all factors that will at the end of the day affect whether they become a customer or use the service or not. Making sure that the brand is actually sustainable and solidified within that market.
100%. And then even, I mean, if you're looking at, take that out of your brand, out of your user space, but into your competitors, what your competitors look like, what are their price points, who do they look like they're talking to? These are all, important in terms of choosing your audience. So I actually had a good question here. I'm going to leave this, Jared, I'm going to put this one in your court. SEO is free, search engine optimization is free, or is it? So I'm going to let you talk this one through, because I know not 90%, but a good number of people say, but no, it's free, it's free. Nothing's free. Good lesson is there's no such thing as a free lunch. So maybe you could just talk to us about some of the costs to think about when doing SEO, or at least doing good SEO. I mean, you can do anything worth doing is worth spending time on. So yeah, take it away.
So on this one, I mean, my theory is pretty much the same in terms of how these companies like Facebook and Google, that they provide great products, but the end goal is to make money, and they do make a lot of money. So they've positioned their products in a way as such that media buyers have been forced to use them. So when you're talking SEO versus PPC, I've heard this question asked a lot, and to me, I actually saw a poll earlier today asking which is more important, SEO or PPC. It's a lot of people were saying SEO for your exact reason that it's free. It's definitely not free. Like a senior SEO specialist comes at a good cost. Any great SEO tools that are going to be monitoring your website and sort of making sure that everything is optimized comes at a great cost. And that cost is something that initially is going to be expensive, and you're not going to see immediate return on investment. But yes, long term is a great strategy. Another very key thing to keep in mind is that if you're trying to build up rank for generic keywords or very popular keywords, let's say car insurance, you can rank number 1 in the country in terms of your organic search engine results, and you're generally not going to be in view, when we say in view, above the fold for that keyword, because of the amount of competition there is on that keyword for paid media. In which case, for certain categories and certain keywords, paid media becomes far more important than SEO. And it's just the way that it works. When you're looking at more niche categories, less competitive, long tail keywords, then SEO becomes extremely important. So yeah, it very much depends, and it really does take a specialist to break that down and decide what route to go.
Yeah, and there's also, I mean, I think where people also forget is, not forget, but they don't always come to terms with this SEO is this huge engine, the fuel of which is the technical SEO, but also your content production. And that content production can take a phenomenal amount of time to get it rolling well, to get it working like a pipeline essentially, and to be high quality. And there's also there's payers in that team who need to be considered, and of course everyone needs to eat at the end of the day. They need to be paid as well. So 100% it's not free. Thank you very much. I actually have someone having asked a quick question here about the value of backlinks for SEO. I mean, we know it's cornerstone stuff. Did you have anything to add about that in terms of good backlinks?
So, I mean, you get different theories all the time, right? But at the end of the day, my experience is seeing that backlinks are crucial. So a lot of people might not understand what we mean by this, but it's essentially saying that, if a certain domain is referring to your website and that domain has a good authority or good reputation, then the likelihood of your website being ranked higher thanks to the direction of consumers towards your site from that particular site would be beneficial to you. So yeah, I can always see the importance of backlinks. Very important again to understand that backlinks can be just as harmful as they can be good, and so it's important to sort of again strategically think about who you align with and what partnerships you have in terms of structuring that backlink strategy into your website.
100%. I've seen it. I've even seen people do damage to other people's sites. I like to think of it as a link bomb. and they just point to tens of thousands or millions of poor value links to a site, and it just really hurts. So I think it's important, as you say, you know, the quality. I mean, the tools are out there. You can measure the links coming in, the quality attached to those, and then use that to better manage your process, or your SEO process. I've got some good questions here, and I'm gonna take from the poll here. The question was, how many people who are attending believe that their site is optimized for conversion? And the majority of people said, no, it's not optimized for conversion. And I think that's a good question. What if I am getting, and it's a question I can see here, I'm getting loads of traffic, it's going to site, but my conversion is terrible. I mean, for me, that immediately speaks to having an optimized position. And if the guys, if everyone attending the webinar is going, but I don't have an optimized position, then I think that's something we should all be talking about. I mean, Brett, even just things comes to my mind, and this might be very old school thinking, but like quality scores or having high quality for Google Ads. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I hope we haven't lost everyone with the technical terms like quality scores, but basically, you know, ensuring that, you know, your website is relevant to that audience. I mean, I like to take it in layman's terms. I mean, ultimately, somebody's going to Google with a question, and your website needs to be the answer, and really making sure you're presenting yourself, as Jared said, and putting your best foot forward and is fundamental to your success online. So before you go and invest all this money, you know, getting the fundamentals right are key to the 101s. And I think, you know, one key term that maybe people in the audience have heard is call to action. And that really, on a really simplistic level, is you're driving all this traffic, you've got all this great number of web visits, but like when that user gets there, what do you want them to do? What is the action you want them to take? And like little tricks that we've implemented from a lead generation perspective is just making your phone number visible. You'd be surprised how many websites exist that you need to go on the craziest witch hunt to find that phone number. And ultimately, why do you have your website in the first place? It's for people to get in touch with you. So why you're hiding key information for that to happen? So, you know, Rhys, I think you make a very valid point there, is that just simplistically getting people to do what you want after you've driven there needs to be at the cornerstone of the website that you build.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's kind of you know, you can have the best pipeline in the world, but if it ends in a brick wall, you're actually wasting money at that point. And it's actually a good time for you to take a step back and say, all right, well, what can this is working. I can see, you know, I've got people coming through. If you know your analytics, you know, the engagement's good, etc., but they're just not converting, then you've likely got a UX problem. You know, you could also, there's a question here about business owners encouraged to consider that they are targeting the wrong market instead of lowering their prices, and it's a good point. You know, what's a better place? Actually, I'm going to ask my next question while I do this. So the next poll is, where do I need to spend money? Everywhere. It's actually a good question. What's of higher value, or are they of equal value? Rhys, I'm going to ask you this question. What's the good place to start? If I'm not getting the conversion I want, let's put UX aside. Let's not say it's a UX problem. Do you think it's more likely to be a spend issue, or more likely to be a targeting issue, or could it be, you know, a bit of both? And how could someone start looking at that?
Yeah, so there's obviously a couple of key components that link through to actually measuring your ROI or your ad spend or your click-through rate, etc. And I think it's important we look at it as a holistic approach, because one, we have the creative of it. So that's obviously the creative asset, whatever the medium is that we are going to market with, whether that be a video, a static image, etc. Then understanding the parameters that each platform works with those specific types of content. So, for example, if you're going to put a lot of text on ads on Facebook, they're going to throttle that because that's not according to the community guidelines. Then, for example, so those are all things that we need to look at in terms of the holistic approach. Another thing is the copywriter. So the copywriter needs to actually write to convert, or are we writing for brand awareness? Are we writing for brand positioning? Then once that's done, then it will go over to the designer. The graphic designer will then put everything together, if it's going to be a static, or the animator will put it together. And then looking at all of those and how that works together, because that's going to affect, at the end of the day, your click-through rate or your conversion rates. So yes, you do need to spend. One thing that I'm quite passionate about and we drive home quite hard is A/B testing different pieces of content. So we can have one concept, we can have one message, but we can have multiple concepts as to how we deliver that message. So one way could be delivering through Google. Another way could be delivering through Instagram stories. Another way could be with influencer content. All around the same message, but delivering in different creatives and A/B testing which one's going to work best. And then once we look at the data after 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, we can then reflect and double down on what's working best. So I do think that sufficient amount of money needs to be spent so that you can get a decent size pool and a decent size data set so that you can assess accurately within that specific demographic and that location as to what works well and what doesn't work well. So I do think that in the initial phases, you are going to spend a little bit more, you're going to refine it. And the more refined the engine becomes, the less you're going to spend and the higher return you're going to get. That's just what we've seen with our results and the clients that we've worked with as well.
I'm muted, excuse me. You had some good points there. And I think something, and it escapes me sometimes, and I think I drive my creative team insane. It is the ad and content optimization. It's not what works here is it's not going to work there, and you can have this much copy or you should have this much copy, it should this layout, etc. I mean, I know myself, I'm an analyst, so I just tell them no, do it, and they tell me why it can't be done, but this is how you should do it, very, very calmly, and I appreciate that. So I think that's important to consider that it's yes, I'm doing this, but how well am I doing it, and how can I do it better?
Yep.
And another question that comes to mind, I'll just get your opinion on this, but what is a good time frame to run any campaign before either deciding this is working or this is not working? I usually like to think of it as, well, what can I do better? But I mean, for instance, I would say a week is not enough time to make a decision. What would your opinion be on that?
I think it's quite relevant to the objective of the campaign, when your time frames as well. How long do you have before you can actually A/B test the content? Before you can see how the audience is responding to it. Usually Facebook takes between 24 and 48 hours to actually start learning, even up to 72 hours to start learning specific campaigns, whether it's a reach campaign. There's obviously different. There's, if you're running a impression campaign or video campaign or shopping campaign, catalog campaign, there's obviously different objectives for each of them, and each of them take a specific amount of time to learn. The AI needs to learn how the ad is interacting with the targeted audience. So personally, we've seen ads convert as soon as 48 hours for clients. And then we've also seen creatives that's taken, 15 to 20 different types of creatives to A/B test each one. And then only after that, after about 3 weeks, making a decision as to this is what we're going to be using for the season. But I also think it links to how long you're going to run the campaign for. Sometimes you don't have 2 weeks to A/B test content. The content needs to go out now. The creative needs to go out now. Everything needs to be measured, and the campaign needs to be live in 48 hours. So it all depends on those parameters. But ideally, the more time you have, the more you can A/B test, the more you can refine, the more budget you're going to save in the medium to long run. So if you do have time on your side, I definitely spend the time to create multiple creatives, even polo to the audience, and see what they're engaging with more. These tools are like, for example, a poll is available for free on Instagram. Just go to the sticker section, add it to, see what your audience is engaging with, and you actually won't waste or spend budget on something that they're actually not interested in. So use the small tools, start dropping it in there, increase the engagement as well. And ideally, if you have time, that's great. But if you don't, you're just going to have to run with it. But ideally, I would say about 3 weeks from our personal experience. 2 to 3 weeks.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. I've got a few more questions, but I'm also cognizant of time. So before I get to what is probably the most important section, Jared, I got a question for you. And I was thinking back to what both Rhys and Brett had said about audiences and targeting. I mean, Facebook and LinkedIn can get quite granular. You can get quite specific. But one of the questions I have in my head is like, when is it too specific? It comes back to that. Well, should I be paying more, or should I be working harder on my targeting? I don't know if you can maybe just fill in on that one about or particularly that I'm thinking LinkedIn and Facebook audiences.
Yeah, so it's a very important question, and it's a mistake that's made by big agencies. I've seen senior paid media practitioners make this mistake, and it's going too granular. So they create specific content that speaks to certain very specific personas. And by doing so, their audience pools become very small. And what happens when your audience pools become very small is you end up with numerous ad sets or targeting sporadically based on your creative. Not only that, but you have to pay for that creative. And so it increases your costs from the production perspective. I very much believe in the trusting the machine learning that Facebook has. I've often seen brilliant results just by allowing those algorithms to giving them time to factor in what information is being fed to them so that they can optimize based on the objective that you're setting. And really, when people go too niche, all they're going to do is narrow the audience pool and inflate their costs. So for me, most important thing is understand that Facebook is picking up hundreds or thousands of signals that you can never pick up, no matter how good of an analytical specialist you are. You're never going to be able to pinpoint the amount of signals that Facebook is picking up through machine learning every day. So feed those platforms with great data that you get. If you've got a customer, like people were speaking earlier about targeting, if you've got a customer size of people you know are trustworthy and loyal to your business, it's a great place to start in building lookalike audiences based around the data that's provided there. Obviously, you need to be compliant, and there's quite a few rules that are in place around that. But that is the best place to start. Is just trust the software, because people have been frightened by some of the ads that they see just by having conversation, and they're like, wow, how did that happen? It's just incredible how these apps are developing. So I would rather go less on the creative side, more quality on the creative side, and then trust the machine learning rather than overly segment.
100%. I mean, all of these systems are just super sophisticated algorithms, and their data input points are ridiculous. So, I mean, I would definitely err and agree with you and say, look, let the machine do what the machine was designed to do. Obviously within reason, as you said about compliance and regulation, which is, I'm not even going to go down that road because I will keep you here until the cows come home. Rhett probably knows all about that. So anyway, sorry. I digress.
I would echo Jared's sentiments on the same can be said around Google. I think you really want to start with a broader audience and let the data guide you in terms of refining it. As Jared said, there are millions of data points, and the machines are a lot smarter than us. And you do need to, that's where the setup is so fundamental, and the data and how you define the data points that you want the machine to look at are fundamental to your success.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what digital is. I mean, we live in this machine environment. It's there to use. And I think, talking back to, get yourself educated, where we were speaking earlier, the content's there. If you check out Google, Google Academy, Facebook Blueprint, just get a sense of how it works. You're going to do yourself such a big favor if you do that. Just because we're getting into time here, and I want to see if we got any questions just now, but one of the things I want to talk about is, what does good marketing look like to each of us, in this panel? And I'll tell you from my side, because I'm really boring. Good marketing to me is having a super effective data set. That means that my inputs, my collection, my processing, my surfacing of the data, visualization, reporting is stellar, because I can use that to feed back into departments, etc. And for me, that's what a good marketing setup looks like. Of course, I am an analyst in the team. So I'm just going to go around the room. Brett, I'm going to start with you again. What does good marketing look?
Yeah, I think for me, Rhys, I mean, it comes down to your commercial goals. I think we do a lot of work with the businesses we work with, saying we really need to define with them what a commercially viable marketing cost for every lead in their business is, because I think that really is what this is all about. I mean, you could have great marketing, but then generate leads at twice the cost of the revenue you can generate from that lead. So really, I think for me, it all comes down to understanding what marketing cost you can apply to your marketing efforts to ensure those marketing efforts on whichever platform are commercially viable. That for me is what good marketing looks like.
Great. I mean, that actually, you actually really simplified it nicely there. Is, you could be doing the most amazing thing. It's like, wow, this is amazing, but you get no money for it. It's like, but look how cool it is. It's, yeah, but look at our bank account. It's just not helping. So 100%, can get behind that. But and having said that, though, there's also different types of return. I might talk financial return, but your bigger brands might say, okay, but there's a brand aspect return to it, or an awareness aspect. Well, I want that piece of the market segment that I'm going to attack. But 100%. Rhys Mayer, same question. What does good marketing look like to you?
I think for every brand, it's going to be slightly different, and everybody's going to measure it slightly differently. But at the end of the day, for us, if we're able to meet our brand goals, our objectives specifically through the creative and through marketing efforts, whether that be more leads, whether that be more sales, whether that be more brand awareness, clearly defining that. And if the marketing efforts from that clearly convert into that, I'm happy with that. Obviously making sure that we have a good brand ethos in and around that the brand speaks throughout, from when the client or the possible customer sees it the first time to converting them. I'll be happy with that.
Okay, great. I guess, it comes down back to return. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Jared, same question. And then I've got another question as well for everybody, not just Jared, of course.
Same answer. It boils down to one thing, is you've got to get return on your ad spend. If you're not getting return on your ad spend, then you're wasting your money, all right? Because you're going to end up with a negative outcome. I think the only difference is that people need to realize, or business owners need to realize, that dependent on the product, you're not going to get that return on ad spend immediately. And it just depends on understanding what product you're selling or what service you're selling, how long that life cycle is, where your business is positioned to see how long it should take before you can get your ad spend back. Certain industries or certain verticals would be almost instantaneous, whereas others are people that were asking previously about LinkedIn and B2B. B2B will take months before you can get certain return on investment. It's a very hard one, and that's simply because the life cycle or the consumer decision journey in terms of deciding whether to go and the amount of research and investigation that needs to go into that requires more learning and longer A/B testing, and really that there might be on Facebook 400 sales in a day, but on LinkedIn you might make one sale in 4 months and make the same return on investment. So it comes down to, things are very different, but at the end of the day, you need to make money at the end of it. There needs to be more output than you've put into your media spend.
Great. I mean, we're hearing the same thing across the board here. If you're going to put in an effort, make sure that what you're taking out is great. And I think, that time-based aspect is really important in digital. Jared, I think you've got a great example there. Your B2C space, depending on the product you're moving, FMCG, you could probably start generating some form of return now. But B2B, something that's even, your complex business types, they take time to either educate people or to create that interest and awareness aspect. And that definitely takes time. And I think what I would say to anyone in this thing in the webinar now is the baby bathwater scenario. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because it looks like it's not working right now doesn't mean that it won't work. Remember, have all your data points in place. As Rhys said, data is very important in this whole process. Make sure you're learning, make sure you're collecting information and you're reviewing it. I just want to ask you, I think, getting a few questions here about email campaigns and relevance, in the market. I think that's a good question. Email was the big thing and then it dropped, and, and social media was the big thing. And now with all the compliance coming through, etc. And I think there's a word I'm going to throw out there, and you guys don't have a heart attack, but this idea of first party versus third party data. Basically the data you own versus the data that Facebook owns, and how they can share that between sites for retargeting. And we know in the industry it's a problem. Retargeting is becoming a bit of an issue because of third-party data. So a good question here that someone's asked is, well, what about your own databases? Is it worthwhile using email in that sense? I mean, I would say yes. It's kind of a first-party ownership. So I would definitely say if you've got emails, you've got a good database, or you add that into your process for marketing, I think that's a win. Rhys, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a space for email campaigns and email marketing. I just think the objective needs to be very clear. That's why I think we've seen a large increase with text as well, business to business text. One thing that I know converted quite well for us was having a text pop up on the actual site itself. So when clients come to the site and they can't find a product that they're looking for, they could just type in to the direct messenger, and one of our assistants would be available to help them. So that's an example of text. But for email as well, I definitely think when you're running campaigns, nurturing that, as long as there's value going across to the end consumer, they won't feel that it's spam. So you really need to identify your strategy, put it into play, understand the consumer, and provide value across those emails so that it doesn't come across as spammy, that you're just another email in their inbox. You definitely need to provide value at the right times as well. But definitely they can be a very good return on investment, and you're not paying every single time. Yes, you're paying possibly for your manager to manage your email campaigns, but that's a direct and clear line of communication to your consumer. So I definitely think it has its space, especially top and tail of the month, to push the needle a little bit more.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, something you said there about don't be spammy, but I always say to people, what is the digital marketing environment? It's a transaction environment. I give, you get, you give, I get. And that works not just from I buy, I give you money, you buy, but I mean, you talk about like high value content, downloadables, gated content. People are willing, if you've got good content, okay, I'll sign up for your newsletter because, wow, look at the stuff I'm getting. But if your content is spammy and poor value, your churn rate in your email lists will be ridiculous.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, great. Just in terms of time here, because Sam, Dennis, unless I'm wrong, we are getting close to the end. I want to do a wrap up. Again, I'm going to start with Jared. And the question I asked, I actually wrote down here, and then I forgot how I rewrote it, so I'm going to read it. Okay, right. So, Jared, what are the top 2 things every business should think about when looking at digital marketing, for your top 2 things?
Yeah, so I mentioned a SWOT analysis initially. So the biggest thing is you have to differentiate what is going to make your business appealing. If you don't know what that is, if you've gone into digital marketing and you don't know what your communication strategy is or how you want to target people, you're going to start off on the wrong foot immediately. Like a quick example is that if you're talking about a product that speaks about screws and nuts and bolts, people might come to your website and inquire, but it might be consumers and you might be a B2B business that only wants to sell 100,000 screws instead of 10 screws. So you can immediately get that wrong. I've seen big corporations do DIY videos. Doesn't make sense from that perspective. So understand why you became passionate, why you chose the consumer you want to sell to, and start off there. And the other thing is, which we've circled back to a number of times, is understand what your end business goal is. What is it that you want to achieve? Initially, people started off with these vanity metrics we keep talking about, likes, and that evolved into engagements, and that evolved into traffic, that evolved into conversions. And now even a lead is a vanity metric, because at the end of the day, a lead without a sale is worth no value to the company. So understand what your business goal is and aim towards that from start to finish. Yeah.
I think that's actually really great. I mean, the thing that comes to mind is failing to plan is planning to fail, essentially. You need to know where you're going, and I think that is something people just miss. It's like, let's go do Facebook. Cool. What did you want it to do? And then the worst part of it, now you got to look back and decide whether it did well or not. Well, you didn't actually know what you were measuring against, so how are you going to tell whether it did well or not? So thanks. That's very good advice. Rhys, best person in the world, I know because I've got your name. What are your top 2 takeouts?
Top 2 takeouts when marketing, I think one would definitely be making sure that you've got a solid brand online before you actually start marketing. A lot of the time people spend large amounts of budget and the brand online is nowhere near where it needs to be in order to convert what they're trying to market. So that would definitely be one of them, making sure that you have a solid brand, you've got solid messaging, your creatives are there, and that your ethos runs across the board. And then the second one is making sure that you have a clear call to action. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're paying to market to a specific audience, you want to have the ability to actually convert them, whether it be a lead, whether it be a converted sale, or the service or product offering, is just make sure that that is clear and that's always available to them. I think Brett mentioned earlier about the telephone number being available on the Google indexing or the Google My Business. I think that's a great example on just be available so that they can contact you and have a call to action when you do market to them. Mute, Rhys.
I'm getting there. Sorry, it's slow. Again, we're coming full circle to that planning again. Knowing where I'm going, what I'm going, what am I going there with? Here's my brand. This is what it looks like, it feels like, and that's how am I going to translate this in the right places online. So 100% on board with that. Thank you very much. Brett, what are your top two?
Yeah, I mean, I can't echo the guys' thoughts enough, but I think a couple of things that have probably been missed is that, and I saw, a large proportion of the audience says that like a marketing budget of under $5,000 is sufficient. So I'm sure there are a lot of small business owners in this audience. So I think my message to small business owners is that there are some tools that exist, like I spoke about earlier, and Billy in the audience also mentioned, like Google My Business, where that is a free tool to get your business discoverable online. And that's really the first step you need to take to open the digital door, be it that or a Facebook page. Don't expect to shoot the lights out from that, but you've got to get the fundamentals right. And the next thing is that if you are going to start investing money on any of these platforms, they're all data-driven initiatives, and data, you need to, as Rhys said earlier, data takes time to analyze and the machine needs time to learn. So there are no, I want to dispel any theories that there are any get rich quicks or this world of instant gratification we live in. You need to be in for the long run, and this is not a T20, it's a test match, and you've got to be there. You've got to be there till the end if you want to learn, iterate, and get smarter and use your marketing to make smarter business decisions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I really like that, especially in the make smarter business decisions. And that probably comes into my top two, just to finish off, and then we are done. I would tell anyone here, spend time learning. There's so much information out there, and the better educated are, the easier it's going to be to comprehend and use these systems. And the other thing is a bit of patience and be realistic. I think sometimes people approach digital as the silver bullet, especially if you've never done it before. It feels like the silver bullet, and it's not a silver bullet. So, if you shoot and you don't hit it the first time, don't give up. Just keep going, keep planning, keep learning, and you'll get there with consistency and persistency. If that's even a word, I don't know if that's a word, but anyway. So guys, yeah, thank you so much to our panelists. Really enjoyed speaking with you guys. Thank you so much to OnlineX, for putting this all together, and to everyone who has attended. I hope you had fun, that you learned a lot, and that you'll join us in the next one. So yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, guys.